Hello everyone, today we're gonna check out time-lapse pictures of my SPS and Acropora growing over the past 3 years in my Red Sea Reefer 250. Hello everyone, welcome back to Amra Azul TV. This is my favorite video of the year. So my tank has been running for 3 years now, and every month I go with my camera and I take pictures of my SPS and corals, and this is the video where I get to show you the progression of growth for every one of my colonies. So the video setup, we're gonna go through colony by colony, and I'm gonna give you information about PAR, and the video is organized from the fastest growing corals to the slowest. Before we start, if you are interested in learning about the husbandry of my tank, I've just released a series of videos. One video is on just kind of basic information on husbandry. Another video is on my light and flow. There's another video about the equipment that is running in my Red Sea Reefer. So do check them out. There's going to be links up top here. And so let's get started. All right, so I'm gonna start with Montipora, and actually I'm gonna start with Encrusting Montipora. And I've had like a bunch of them in my tank, and I initially thought it was a good idea because they give you a lot of color and fill up the space. That is until I ran into this invasive pink mystic Montipora. And the pink mystic in my tank, it grew really, really quickly. And it encircled some of slower growing Acropora like this Blue Voodoo here, and it actually will result in Acropora receding. So I actually had to like fight a battle with this encrusting pink mystic. It was just kind of taking over everywhere, and I had to remove an entire boulder to kind of keep it under control. I have Superman, I have a couple of other encrusting, like Mystique encrusting Montipora, and they're not as invasive, but certainly the pink mystic, it grows way too fast to my liking. So I kind of retract my recommendation for pink mystic. This is a Christmas Montipora. It forms a cap and it grows really, really well. And again, in a small tank, my advice is to try to keep the Montipora caps somewhere on the bottom, because they do get quick. They do grow really quickly, and if they grow really quickly and they're somewhere up top, then they're essentially going to be shading your Acropora or any corals underneath. So my advice is to kind of try to keep them somewhere low. I do frag them a lot, and it's kind of interesting. You could see where I cut like big chunks of this colony. Somehow when you kind of cut a piece, it takes a while for the coral to grow again in that direction. So that's something to be mindful of, and you could just create really funky shaped colonies based on how you kind of frag the corals. All right, next up I have ORA Birds of Paradise. This colon, it's a bird's nest type Acropora. Bird's nest type SPS. It grows really, really quickly. This is great for filling up space, but what I found with this colony is that as it grows really densely, it actually shades itself, and then the inner parts of the colony starts dying, and algae kind of takes over the core. So you see this colony, it's growing really quickly, and obviously you could see how I've been kind of fragging it to kind of keep it on top. But starting now, you see that there's green in the bottom, and essentially the algae was kind of taking over because the colony shades itself. So I had to really kind of drastically frag the colony and get it small again. Just know that when you have any kind of tree nest or bird's nest or cauliflower corals, that they do this. All right, next up is the Pacman, Reef Raft Pacman. It looks very similar to Needle in a Haystack. I got this as a small 1-inch frag, and this thing is sitting on the sand bed getting about 100 to 150 par, so very low light, and it is loving life. It grows like gangbusters. First, it started branching up. It didn't really do any extensive basing out, but it did branch up right away. and it's got this very kind of whimsical look to it. It reminds me of a bonsai tree. It grows super quickly. I can't frag it enough. I mean, you see here it's getting this antler kind of look with 2 colonies, and I keep snipping. I think one month I cut like 15 frags, and I think about here. Oh no, that was the end. But you don't really notice it. It just grows so quickly. All right, my mystery tort, I think it's a Miyagi tort. I got this as a small 1-inch frag. It looked brown. I put it somewhere where it's getting around 200, 300, 250, 300 par. And then within about 6 months, it started getting these amazing colors. You know, it's like green to pale pink to purple with blue polyps. It just looked fantastic. It was my favorite colony. It's my avatar on many of the forums. So really loved this colony, but for some reason, as it started kind of getting bigger and bigger, uh, it just started kind of turning purple. Like this is epic right now. This is the colony looking at its best. But then just notice the next few pictures. It's just gonna start looking more and more purple and brown. So here, some of this might be related to kind of water parameter fluctuations, but the colony kind of never recovered once it got to a certain size. There is a little bit of the colony that's growing underneath that looks fantastic. So I think maybe it's just got too big and it's not lucky. It just doesn't do well with highlight. All right, another colony that is really fast grower for me is a blueberry wine acro. I got it again as a 1-inch frag. The colony lost the frag lots this color for the first kind of year. So I was pretty patient with this colony because it looked essentially brown for a year. It's sitting somewhere in a tank where it's getting about 300 par. It encrusted really well. It was growing really well, but it just was brown. But then somehow, somewhere around like the year and a few months, year and a half, I started seeing the electric blue colors in the tips, and then it just kind of totally transformed, and the colors just got super intense. It's hard to take pictures of this colony, but it really is like just very, very vibrant, like electrical blue with kind of a white base. It's a very, very beautiful colony, and it's growing super fast. I have to actually like be a little bit more aggressive with fragging it because it's taking over the top shelf. Then Reef Raft Pink Cadillac, very, very expensive small frag. I think it was $300 for this tiny little frag. It encrusts really well. It's got this pink base with white growth strips and blue polyps. And it actually it grows like a weed for me. It is one of my fastest growing colony, and if you look at my tank, it is one of the largest colonies. It is sitting in the top shelf, getting around 300, 350 par, and it's a fairly robust colony. I mean, the water parameters have shifted a lot. I mean, if you guys seen my tank, you would have seen that it was a lot of up and downs in the first year and a half, and it just kind of was happy and loving life during all of that. So no really big changes in color. It's a solid kind of robust coral that grows really fast. Okay, next up is really inexpensive Acropora TENUIS. You know, goes to show you that you don't have to spend a lot of money to get really beautiful corals. So this is it's hard to see in the pictures, but it's a turquoise type of TENUIS. You know, just nothing fancy here, but it's sitting on the bottom, getting around 200 par. Not in the bottom, like in the middle of the tank, and it grows really well. And the shape of the growth where it's at, it looks again very kind of whimsical. It looks like a thin staghorn how it's growing with these kind of long reaching limbs. Again, super fast growth. Very, very interesting shape. You know, for I think a frag that I got for like $10, it's really well worth it. And I really like the kind of the shape of the colony as it's growing up, and it's always got its polyps out, and again, very robust corals. All right, next up is a Bonsai VALIDA, and this is a true survivor. I literally got this as to test my water chemistry the first month of the tank, and this colony like was for maybe a year and a half uh, almost on its deathbed, where it just paled out and it looked super brown. It was literally like STNing. I saved a few tips. I mounted up on the top shelf where it's getting around 250 par, and then it just took off, and no longer brown, and it's got these lovely blue tips, white base, and fluorescent green polyps. Super fast grower, lovely colony. Again, inexpensive frag that just looks killer in your tank. Highly recommend the Bonsai Valida. All right, next up is my green slimer. Everybody says that the green slimer grows really fast. When I first got this coral, I had it like around 150 par. It wasn't kind of too happy there. It started paling out a little bit. Then I moved it up where I was getting about 250. Then it started really taking off. It got its colors back. It started growing, basing out, and also getting taller. Then when I had to remove one of my boulders because of the Encrusting Montipora that was kind of taking over, I then had to move this colony back where it's getting maybe 150 par. It's still doing okay down there. You'll see the move fairly soon. So right now it's kind of looking at its best, and then I think this is when I did the re-aquascape. And yep, so no, not yet. Here is the re-aquascape, so it's kind of in the bottom. It's still looking good, it's still growing, but it's obviously it's getting a little bit shaded by the tort, so it's not growing as fast. But it's not like super growth coral for me. Next up is a shochaholic. This I feel came from like a wild colony. It looked super beautiful, fluorescent green, like nuclear green for maybe the first year. It's growing really quickly. It is one of my fast growing colonies, but then it kind of lost its color somewhere near September 2017, and it hasn't really like fully recovered. Actually, so it lost its color and then it came back, and then I think it was around summer of 2018 where it got really brown. Yes, starting around here, you'll see the colony getting brown. And for really no apparent reason, all the other colonies were happy. The color is kind of coming back a little bit, but it's just it wasn't what it was when I purchased this. Sometimes when you get wild colonies, they look good, they look awesome for a little bit, and then they just kind of look blah. Next up is my blue Cali Tort. I got this as a 2-inch frag, and it grew in a very interesting way. So first it just kind of shot up. It stood up like a sore thumb. And then after it shot up to about maybe like 3 or 4 inches, then it started kind of encrusting. So most of my other corals, they encrust first before they shoot up, except for this kind of Cali Tort. It's if you don't, I think a Cali Tort is like a must in any SPS tank. Everybody who comes in and looks at my tank, they're always amazed at like the vibrancy of the blue. It really is a very pretty colony. It's getting around, I think the bottom of the colony is getting around 300 par, and the top is likely getting 350, or if not like 375 par. So it is getting a lot of light. And do check out my top-down videos because the color is amazing. All right, Reef Raft Orange Passion I got as a tiny, like less than 1 inch frag. It's got amazing colors, and if there was, out of all of the colonies that I have, the colony that I'm always looking at, the ones that I'm staring at the most, is the Reef Raft Orange Passion. I think this is one of the prettiest colonies. I might even go out and say that this is one of the prettiest SPS out there. It is just beautiful. Green, fluorescent green base, deep blue tips, and orange polyps. It just looks amazing. My only complaint with this colony is that it does kind of grow slow. So it's getting around 300 par, and part of it's growing slow is, I think, the Encrusting Montipora, the pink mystic, did bother it a little bit. I was always trying to kind of kill that bit of pink around the base. And I am trying microfragging this colony to see if it could grow a little bit faster, but definitely a beautiful colony, medium to slow growth. All right, Aura Red Planet, I got it as a 1-inch frag. It's in a place of the colony where it's getting about 250 par. And you'll notice that, my colony is mostly green, and that's usually, and an Aura Red Planet, a green Red Planet usually means that it's not getting as much light as it needs. Or maybe not as much light as it needs, but it's not getting as much light to become red. But I'm actually really happy with the green. I like this kind of green base with some bits of red and the red polyps. I actually like that look. This colony is a little bit frustrating, and it's been encrusting and encrusting and encrusting and encrusting. It's been encrusting for 3 years pretty much. It's only in the last few months that I'm actually seeing tips coming up. And again, I don't know whether this is related to low light, but it's done a lot of encrusting, but not a lot of upwards growth. All right, here's some new frags that I've added to the tank. This is a tiny frag of Red Planet, which I got early in 2018. But that tiny frag has actually been growing surprisingly well. It's been a year later, and now we have what I consider to be like a really robust mini colony with that I could start fragging if I wanted to. It's on the top shelf, getting around 350 par. It's got this lovely deep red purple, but the new tips are kind of light blue, which is really cool. All right, this is a fox flame. It looked really amazing when I got it. I had it at a place where it had 300 par, but it started browning out. I moved it to the bottom, almost in the sand bed, getting around 150 par. And I'm actually seeing signs of recovery. You see here, I'm seeing more red and more of the neon green tips. So I think it's going to do well here. All right, just a reminder that not all frags make it. So here's the kind of the wall of shame. The pink millis actually, it didn't die. I got this as a colony, and it quickly doubled in size. It looked kind of cool, but I don't think it was getting enough light where it was, and it just was kind of blah. So I removed it, and it also grew really quickly, but nobody wanted frags of it. So you literally couldn't get rid of your frags. So I kind of at the end was like, I was just like, meh, I'm just gonna get a different colony. So I traded it into my LFS. Okay, then we're going to talk about colonies that did actually die. And the theme here is a lot of them tend to be new colonies that just came from the ocean. So this was marketed as an Aussi Rainbow. It looked really pretty for a few months. And then out of nowhere, it just started kind of declining. STN, it started browning out, and it wasn't happy. It didn't look happy, and I think I had to just cut it out and remove it from the tank because there was no signs of recovery. The next up is a SECALE Acropora. Again, I think it came from a wild colony. It was a very cheap frag, but essentially it wasn't growing fast enough, and the colonies, the Red Planet nearby, was growing fast. So the Red Planet literally just took over the SECALE. You could kind of see the Acropora engulf the SECALE, and then there's no more SECALE. It's just a Red Planet. ORA Blue Voodoo, I love that colony. It had amazing colors, but it was a really slow grower. And I think this is the colony that was a victim to the encrusting pink mystic. You'll see here that despite the slow growth, it actually looked pretty good, and it was encrusting, and it was looking happy. But then the pink mystic took over that rock, and it totally encircled the blue voodoo. And then you could start seeing the deterioration. So you started seeing STN, and the colors started kind of going a little bit weird. So here you could see the pink mystic kind of encroaching, and I did try to stay on top of the pink mystic by trying to kind of kill the pink mystic around the blue voodoo, but it was a losing battle because the pink mystic just came back really quickly. And so these are kind of the last few pictures of the blue voodoo before it totally got engulfed by the pink mystic and started STNing. But it was like a beautiful coral. All right, the sunset MILLI. This was again cut from the ocean. It looked great. It's always looked great, but the problem is, it never grew. So I've had this frag for maybe a year and a half, and it never grew. It looked great as a tiny frag, but there was no signs of encrusting. It just stayed the same size for a year and a half. And after I did try moving it up and down and sideways, trying to find the sweet spot. Ultimately, I kind of gave it back to the LFS because it's just I don't think it was fully adapted to my tank. Then Deepwater Acro. This is another colony where it didn't die. I just got rid of. I had it on the bottom. With deepwater acros, you don't want to put them in a lot of light. And this colony is super sensitive. Anytime I like looked at the tank, it would brown out. When it's colorful, it's really beautiful. It's got electric green flesh and purple tips, but literally, you know, it looked like hell. It looked brown for more than half of the time in my tank, and I just kind of gave up trying to make it happy. I did like move it around to make sure that it was getting not too much light, but not too little light either. And I just could not keep it happy, so I had to kind of I literally actually removed this entire rock when I re-acroscaped about 6 months ago. So that was a colony that just kind of didn't cut it. The next few colonies are two colonies that I really wanted to keep, but I just couldn't. So the one is the strawberry shortcake. I got it. It looked beautiful. It did start encrusting, but then I went away on vacation, and it totally. I came back finding a white skeleton, so it RTN'd. Then the other colony, one of my favorite colonies, my all-time favorite colonies that I can't keep despite me trying 3 times, is the ice fire ECHINATA. And again, every time I've tried, the frags either died right away, or they looked good for maybe a month, and then they started declining and STNing. And I think that, you know, the ice fire ECHINATA, a lot of it is cut from wild colonies, and I think part of the problem is that the wild colonies just some strains just are not able to adjust to our kind of captive environment, or can't adapt to aquaculture. So I think that's a problem. I did try several times. Every time I tried and failed, I said I'm never going to try again, but next time I saw a frag, I would always buy it. But I literally can't find any other aquarists nearby that is able to keep ice fire long term. So, you know, if you could keep ice fire in ECHINATA in your tank for more than a year, then please let me know what your secrets are, because I really want this colony, but I just can't justify spending like $100 a frag every time it comes up and then have nothing to show for it. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. It's been a fun journey. I really like doing this video because not just to show you kind of how the corals have been growing, but also for me to kind of appreciate the growth patterns of some of these corals, why some corals grow faster than others. And you do notice in the pictures that the growth is not kind of consistent, that some month there is kind of a spurt of growth, and I try to kind of understand what led to that spurt. You know, it's fun to kind of appreciate you know, you can't, when you look at your corals, you can't kind of see them growing day to day. So doing these kinds of videos, I think, is really great to kind of get to appreciate how slow and how patient you have to be to make your 1-inch frag turn into a lovely large colony. Thank you so much. If you haven't already done so, please do subscribe, and see you next video. Bye.